Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic, get my words out, County Council Planning Committee today. My name is Alan Bell and I'm chairing this committee. But before we go into today's business, it's sadly just to let people know there was a passing of one of our members, Councillor Isabella Roberts, who represented the Horden division. So before we go into business, could we ask everybody to stand? Make sure you get microphones and phones are switched off before as well for a minute's silence. Thank you. Everybody. Just to make everybody aware, this meeting is being streamed and recorded live through the YouTube channel. We have a number of officers with us this morning who I will now ask to introduce themselves, starting with Kirsty over on our right.
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services Officer.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the planning manager, Chair.
Callum Harvey, Senior Planning Officer.
Michelle Penman, Planning Officer.
Graham Blakey, Principal Planning Officer.
Phil Harrison, Highway Development Manager.
Mike Ogden, Access and Rights of Way Team Leader.
Brian Weatherall, Drainage and Coastal Protection Manager.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Do we have any apologies for absence today? Any substitute members, Kirsty?
Councillor George Richardson and Councillor Elaine Peake substitute for George this morning.
Okay, do we have any declarations of interest from any members?
Yes, Chair. So my name's Mike. It's Mike Curran from Crook. I objected. I live in a house adjacent to the Persimmon development, the first item on the agenda, and I objected to that when it first came to planning, I think probably about 4 or 5 years ago, before I was elected. When I was elected, just afterwards, I declared that I declared it as a pecuniary interest because the building's right outside the back of my house, and I've received advice on Friday from the solicitor that I need to excuse myself from the meeting, and also that I can't speak as a resident or have any part in the meeting. I just wanted to clarify with the solicitor that I'd understood that correctly.
Yes, Councillor Curran, that's the gist of the advice.
So I'll excuse myself. Can I remain in the chamber, or do I need to leave the chamber?
No, I'm afraid you need to leave the chamber.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Mike. Next item is item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2024. Can we have a mover and a seconder for their minutes?
Move the minutes, Chair.
Second the minutes.
Patricia and Jonathan, thank you. Item number 5 is applications to be determined. The first one on today is land north of High West Road, Crook. Proposed development of 256 residential dwellings with associated infrastructure as amended on the 24th of November 2023. Over to you, Callum.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So the first application is for the construction of 256 dwellings with associated infrastructure at land to the north of High West Road on the edge of Crook. So the first slide shows the site location plan. The extent of the site is shown in red. The red line boundary includes a section of High West Road where the access would be sought in the southwest corner. So the site location plan just shows the proximity of houses to the south and to the east. Second slide again shows the red line boundary with an aerial photograph. So the site comprises agricultural fields. First photograph is taken from the southwest of the site, looking east. So on your right hand side in the photo is High West Road. The proposed access will be coming through the hedgerow just past the bus stop. And another photograph taken again on High West Road, seen on the left. This photograph is looking northwest, again across the southwestern corner of the site. So the access will be taken from the hedgerow on the left hand side, just past the lay-by. So again, site photograph just showing the southwestern area of the site. These are further photographs taken from the centre of the site, looking southwest and then west. Again, looking at the first phase of the development in the southwest corner. These are further photographs looking towards the northeastern area of the site. So this is towards the later stages of the development, taken from the centre. These are further photographs showing the southeast corner from the public right-of-way. So the neighbouring properties along High West Road are shown in the right photograph. And again, more photographs showing those neighbouring properties to the south of the site, also showing the gradient. These are photographs taken from High West Road, so this is off to the east of the proposed access arrangement, where an existing public footpath crosses High West Road. The photographs also show the width of the footpath as well. And these are more photographs taken from the eastern edge of the boundary, eastern boundary of the site. So this is the location of the second stop during yesterday's committee site visit. And these are more photographs showing the eastern boundary, and again showing the gradient from the site down to neighbouring properties. And these are more photographs taken from way off to the northwest, looking back across the site, so the site is on the horizon. So the purpose of these photographs is just to show the site is open countryside with further fields around it. So this is the proposed overall site plan, showing the access arrangement from the southwest corner with a 30-metre landscape buffer along the northwestern edge. I've also indicated the location of the mine shaft with the red circle in the centre of the site there. So this is the distribution of the affordable units and bungalows. So the affordable units are shown in red, blue and orange. Bungalows, this was queried during the site visit yesterday, and these are shown in green. So they are distributed around the site, although we do have a greater number in the southwest corner, which we built out during the earlier phases of the development. This is the proposed access arrangement. So this is a junction with a protected right-hand turn. And as explained in the report, it is felt that this access arrangement is acceptable. There is a pedestrian refuge island to the west, and a further crossing to the east with tactile paving. Another site plan showing the 3 character areas. So as set out in the report, the developer has responded to local characteristics and used 3 separate character areas working through the site. So as you move from west to east, there's a higher density in development and also a change in material palette as detailed in the report. So these are some street scenes produced by the applicant. So this is the first one as seen from High West Road. So the proposed access would be just to the left of this image, showing the use of stone with a row of bungalows facing onto High West Road. This is the second street scene, so this is the centre of the site, known as the village character area, with the play area in the foreground. So again, change in material palette. And this is the third character area in the northeast corner. So just to get through consultees and representations, we do have a couple of officers who have maintained their concerns. The first one is affordable housing. Whilst they agree with the proposed number in mix and tenure of the affordable units proposed, they have requested that more affordable units are located in the southwestern corner of the site. So just to jump to this plan, just to show the red, blue and orange units are the ones being flagged by the affordable officer. The affordable housing officer has asked for more of these to be located in the southwest corner of the site, but as explained in the officer report, on balance we feel that the current distribution is acceptable. The second officer maintaining concerns is regarding landscape. So whilst they are happy with the proposed public open space, they have requested that more street trees be located outside of residential curtilages. So just to show the proposed site plan again, indicating the location of street trees, there are a lot of trees across this development, and on balance it is felt that there are sufficient trees within public areas to be found acceptable. And again, that's explained in the officer report. So we have no objections from statutory consultees, subject to recommended conditions. We have no objections from internal consultees, other than the landscape and affordable housing officers, as previously mentioned, subject to recommended conditions. We also have no objections from external consultees, subject to financial contributions recommended by the NHS and by Sport England, which will be secured through a legal agreement. So at the time of writing the officer report, 52 objections had been received at that point from the public, with one additional letter of support. The matters raised are listed and later discussed within the report. We did receive neutral representations from both the County Durham Green Party and the Campaign to Protect Rural England. So these were neither supporting nor objecting to the current scheme. Whilst both groups note that the site is allocated for housing, they have raised a number of matters which are listed and later discussed within the report. So as a summary, the application originally sought permission for 467 dwellings. Although following the adoption of the County Durham Plan in 2020, the applicant has worked with officers through a number of revisions to the scheme, resulting in the current proposal for 256 dwellings. So that's quite a significant drop. The allocation of the site for housing establishes the site as a sustainable location for development, whilst the delivery of the site would contribute to addressing the identified need for housing across the county, as well as in Crook. The allocation of the site is subject to a number of criteria, and as set out within the officer report, it is considered that the proposal does not conflict overall with these requirements. The principle of the development is therefore supported by officers. So the proposal has been assessed against the relevant policies and material considerations, and subject to the conditions listed in the report, the development's impacts are not considered to be unacceptable. Whilst some concerns remain regarding loss of hedgerows, the distribution of affordable housing, the distribution of street trees, and the density of parking bays in the northeast corner of the site, it is considered that these issues are justified and are therefore, on balance, not unacceptable. Officers therefore consider that the proposal broadly accords with the County Durham Plan and with the NPPF, securing a high quality development on an allocated site for housing. So also got a few updates for you, Chair. The first one is regarding the Section 106 agreement. So under paragraph 313 of the report, it lists a number of matters to be secured by the agreement. On the second bullet point regarding the adoption of children's play area and public open space, it's recommended that this is removed from that paragraph, and instead officers would secure those details through the discharge of condition 21, which is already recommended in the report. Secondly, members may have noted that there are two recommended conditions numbered 31. This is a typo, and the condition numbers following 31 should be updated. Therefore, there are 36 total conditions recommended, rather than 35. As a final update, we've received two further objections following the publication of the report, raising a number of concerns. These have been checked, and members should note that these matters were already raised in the previous objections and are already covered in the officer report. In terms of the concerns raised, again, it's the proximity and height of the hedgerows located adjacent to the southern and eastern site boundaries. Officers have looked at this again and we therefore recommend an update to the wording of Condition 22. So Condition 22 requires the hedgerows adjacent to the southern and eastern site boundaries, as shown in the approved plans, to be maintained at a height of no more than 2.5 metres. Officers recommend that this be updated to a maximum height of 2 metres in response to the concerns being raised by neighbours. So just to wrap up, Chair, officers recommend that members grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed at the bottom of the officer report as updated and subject to the completion of a legal agreement as updated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Callum. We do have a number of speakers speaking on the application today, but first of all we're going to go over to the local member, Councillor Anne Reid. And over to yourself, Anne, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good morning, everyone. I'm Anne Reid. I'm County Councillor for the Crook Division. I'm aware that the High West Road site was allocated for housing development in the County Durham plan. This development is actually less than the original allocation, which I welcome. However, I find it disappointing that the landscape buffer to the north and west boundary appears to be the minimum set out in previously approved policy documents for the site. I also find it disappointing to see that the scheme proposes hedgerow and removal of trees that have a TPO order on them. It is my understanding that the Council's previous planning policy documents established a principle that the loss of such features would be resisted on this site. It's worth bearing in mind that hedgerows and trees do contribute to the present landscape setting of this site, and therefore I am concerned about their removal and would expect that the same amount of trees and hedges are replaced. I also raise concerns about the narrow strip of open space to the rear of many of the existing properties that face onto the site. I feel this is a negative to the scheme and does not properly address the planning policy requirements for the site to have a meaningful buffer to many of the already surrounding residential properties. Flooding has been a concern over a number of years, where residents living on the opposite side of the proposed application have experienced severe flooding and have had to take emergency precautions. I note the committee report states that the flooding levels were assessed as low to medium risk. However, I've been assured that this issue is being addressed by the use of the SUDS ponds. On a more positive note, it's recognised that there is a need for a variety of new homes which would be suitable for the elderly, young couples, families of different sizes, people wishing to get on their property ladder, people who wish to downsize, and people who wish to rent. It is recognised that there is a shortage of homes to rent, and I'm continually contacted by residents who have either spent some time on a waiting list or those families who have become homeless after being issued with a Section 21 eviction notice. In addition, there are those individuals who wish to purchase an economical new home. I am conscious that for at least the next few years, this site will provide work for local tradespeople, local businesses, including local manufacturing companies who produce the building products. Additionally, investing in energy-efficient new homes that are positioned overlooking Weardale will undoubtedly attract new people with new skills and new ideas which will benefit the whole area and for generations to come. And it will showcase Crook as an enviable place to live, work and bring up a family. Finally, if this application is approved, almost £750,000 in Section 106 monies will benefit residents of Crook. I would now ask the committee to take into account my comments when deliberating. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Next we have, can we just check the people who's down to register to speak? We have Robbie Rodders, we have David Longstaff, John Taylor, and Paul Hunt and Adam McVickers for the applicant. Yeah. Okay, then we have, for the objectors, we have 3 minutes each. So we start with Robbie, yourself. Over to you.
I'm sorry, I've got a bad back, I can't stand. Since late 2013, the residents of High West Road and Lowmore Meadows have attempted to be heard and their concerns listened to and understood by the County Council and Persimmon Homes. And this latest amended application makes it very clear that no credence has been given to these concerns, and Persimmon and the County Council have merely ploughed on with their development, come what may. Most of the residents expressing concerns have been born and bred in the town and totally understand the issues, history and needs of the actual town, and more importantly, what would be the consequences of allowing this development to go ahead. Sadly, this is clearly counts for little. I would, however, would like to focus on one issue, and that concerns all residents and users of the road A689, which runs along there into Crook. According to the Persimmon, this development relies upon access to and from the 689 by the creation of a ghost junction, as recommended by the DCC Plan Department. One assumes it was requested as a safer alternative than a large roundabout, simply because Persimmon were unable to obtain additional land to create the said roundabout, which was stipulated in the original county development plan. Persimmon commissioned an updated traffic assessment in 2021, which is obviously 3 years out of date, and which on the face of it appears to be a comprehensive document highlighting all the risks, proposals and solutions to the proposed access point. But to be honest, the uplifted document is virtually a straight lift of the original 2019 document. It's 41 pages long and a piece of research tailored specifically for Crook. I would argue that the transport assessment should be a comprehensive and systemic process that sets out transport issues of a proposed development. I would draw attention to the committee that although it's being deemed as a safe area to put an additional junction in, between the 1st of July 2016 and the 30th of November 2019, there were 760 speeding offences recorded by Durham Police, a 265% increase from the original research data of 2013. So whilst not wishing to cast aspersions...
You've got 30 seconds remaining.
Whilst not wishing to cast aspersions regarding the accuracy of the commissioned transport assessment, I would like to draw attention to the inaccuracy of the report's assertions, and that there were additional road traffic collisions, of which I've recorded them. The 25th of September, a vehicle collision, which ended up with a person going to the hospital. The 14th of April, 21, where one man was arrested after the vehicle was collided with the wall of the farm. June 21, another vehicle collision where the car ended up in the fields at the junction of the A689 and 5 houses. October 2020, a vehicle collision where it hit 4 High West Road and then overturned.
Could we just quickly wind up there, because the 3 minutes is up, if that's okay.
And I'll finish off with December 2019, where a vehicle collided with 35 High West Road because of the speed of the traffic coming down. Okay?
Thank you very much for that. David, yourself as well, you have 3 minutes, and the clerk will remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to start. I live basically adjacent to the proposed development at 25A High West Road, and my garden backs onto the site. You know, for some time now, it's been really great concern to us and local residents at the loss of the farmland. I've got historic interest in farmland, basically. My mum was born on a local farm at Fir Tree, and, you know, I've always had a lot of interest in the environment and local community and the impact that local farming can contribute to society. I think active farmland should not be replaced with housing. I think there should be alternative sites. I know we're a bit far down the line now, but I think that's still a valid point as far as I'm concerned. I think with the green agenda currently in play and the fact that the local government and the central government are given a lot of promotion to local farming and understanding the impact that they can have on the local community, I think it should not be underestimated. I think the negative impact on the wildlife has already been raised and it's been identified. And whilst this has gone somewhere to be mitigated with some of the proposals, I don't think it's been fully realised that the loss of the natural habitat will have on the local communities. I think looking at this application in general, I think the last stage of this application, leading up the meeting, it just feels very rushed. I think since the initial consultation in 2019 and leading up to July 2023, if you look at the Building for Life questions, there was 11 red scores and 1 green. Now, as we all know, red score means it's unacceptable. Not only unacceptable, I was also told by a planning officer that unacceptable means it cannot be reworked to be suitable to meet the criteria. Several attempted revisions have been made to the existing scheme, right? And a number of changes. However, right up to 2023, there was still 11 red scores and 1 green. Then miraculously, over the last few months, everything's wonderful, which is, I don't quite get it. If we look at question 3, relating to the public transport links, the score has gone from red to green, but nothing's changed. The access from the site onto the main road is absolutely terrible. It poses serious health and safety risks. The footpaths take
30
people,
seconds remaining.
take people away from the site up to the top end, and it puts them in a dangerous position. Higher up the road, there's proposed safety crossings. There's not further down the road where the 48 and 49 comes. I think another problem is since the last consultation expiry, a further 64 revised documents have been uploaded onto the portal. Nobody's even had a chance to have a look at them or comment on them. So how can you fully evaluate all the facts when you haven't got all the information? On this last application, there was no private consultation.
Can you just wind up there, David, please? Well done. Thank you very much for that. Next we have John Taylor. You again have 3 minutes and the clerk will remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Initially, I would like to point out that I've got absolutely no objections at all to the planning application. My major concern is probably reiterating to a certain extent what's just been said is regarding the access proposals. I wonder if you could put the access drawing up on the screen, please. In your County Durham plan, paragraph H22, it obviously identifies the High West Road site as being capable of taking 250 dwellings. And it also says in the plan that obviously it's going to provide access with the new roundabout onto the A689 to take additional traffic and also importantly calming to be provided on the road. Highway safety is a very material consideration as far as the planning process is concerned, as you all know. Previous speaker highlighted the speeding issues on High West Road, which are quite evident if you live on High West Road. You can see from the drawing on the screen that the proposed access is approximately, I've scaled it off, is approximately 40 metres to the west of the existing access from High Farm. And the state, High Farm and Thistleflat are approximately 500 houses. So you could maybe anticipate that there would be potentially 50% of those houses use that top access, i.e. the High Farm access, now, which is 250 houses, of course. We've got 250 houses coming from the new entrance on the north side of High West Road, which is 250 houses, and we would reasonably assume that there would possibly be 2 vehicles per dwelling. So that really equates to roughly, I would say, about 500 vehicles, obviously not coming onto the highway at the same time, but 500 vehicles congregating around that spot within the space of 40 metres. A roundabout would obviously certainly improve traffic movement. My understanding of highway engineering and design is that the more movements have got to be made in a short space of time, then there's more chance of there being accidents. It is more dangerous. It is prejudicial
30 seconds remaining.
prejudicial to highway safety. So consequently, I would have thought that a roundabout would be a much more appropriate and practical solution. It would also obviously act as a considerable calming measure as far as the traffic speed down West Road. You can see from the drawing on the screen that the hatched area encroaches beyond the existing High Farm entrance. So within that 40-metre space, I think you're going to have about 6 or 7 different vehicle movements with a substantial amount of traffic.
Okay,
and
John, could you wind up, please?
Certainly, and I think it will be extremely dangerous, and I think it's contrary to highway safety. Thank you.
Thank Next, for the applicant, we have Paul Hunt and Admar Vickers. 9 minutes between you both, or one of you, whoever's going to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam McVickers and I'm the Land and Planning Manager for Persimmon Homes. On behalf of Persimmon Homes, we're pleased to be working with Durham County Council to provide 256 high-quality, sustainable new homes for local people in Crook. Rising mortgage rates coupled with the country's shortage of new housing means people are really struggling to find homes that they can afford in places that they want to live. The housing crisis is rightly high up on the political agenda and was a focal point for all recent party political conferences. Both the Labour Party and the government have committed to delivering 300,000 new homes a year, a target that the country is unfortunately not currently close to achieving. We're proud, therefore, of our record in supporting local first-time buyers, families and young people to buy their own homes. As a company, around 50% of our private sales have been to first-time buyers over the last 2 years. Our home buys typically move from within a 3-mile radius. On Persimmon Homes' nearest development to this site in Shildon, we recently completed the development and over 70% of the home buyers moved from within County Durham itself. The County Durham plan identifies that household growth within the area is expected to increase by a minimum of 25,000 by 2035. The plan allocates 27 housing sites which are critical to be delivered to ensure that this minimum housing need is met, whilst also ensuring that the council retain control of where housing is built across the county through maintaining a deliverable 5-year housing land supply position. This development in Crook forms one of the 27 allocated housing sites identified within the County Durham plan, forming 5% of the total housing allocated within the plan and 40% of the total housing allocated in the Mid-Durham delivery area. With respect to the housing mix, the Council's Strategic Housing Market Assessment identifies a need for family-sized housing across all sizes, whilst identifying greatest need for 2- and 3-bed homes. Of housing proposed as part of this development, 77% is 2- or 3-bed, with smaller provisions for 4- and 5-bed, thus aligning directly with the area's housing need. As an allocated site, it is an established position that the site is a sustainable location for development. As set out in the officer's report, the proposal accords with all the site allocation requirements, ensuring compliance with policy 4 of the plan and securing that the principle of the development is accepted. The proposed development will deliver both a policy compliant 15% affordable housing and 10% elderly persons housing provision delivered through single-storey bungalows. Additionally, proposals are entirely policy compliant with respect to homes being National Space Standard compliant and 66% of homes to be M42 Enhanced Accessibility Standard compliant. The design of development through the incorporation of policy and design requirements establishes 3 distinct and spatially separated development cells, connected through landscaping breaks and centred around retained public rights of way to the west of the site and a strong line of mature TBO trees to the central east of the site. With the development reaching from the rural western edge through to the adjoinment with the established urban area on the eastern boundary, the opportunity to reflect this transition within the development itself has been taken and is reflected in the 3 distinct character areas, all of which have drawn inspiration from local vernaculars. Persimmon Homes have worked closely with council officers and consultants through the design process, responding positively to design comments that had been made, which has enabled the scheme presented today to have scored 9 greens and no reds within the latest Building for Life design review, resulting in a well-designed development that will contribute positively to the town. All homes on the site will be built to a minimum of 2021 Building Regulations Part L, securing a 31% reduction in CO2 emissions over the 2013 regulations through both fabric improvements and provision of solar panels to all homes. In addition, all homes will be provided with electric vehicle charging points. With respect to infrastructure, the site provides significant levels of on-site landscaping and achieves in excess of 10% biodiversity net gain, and includes a formal play area on site. Additionally, commuted sums totaling £838,000 is to be secured towards education, GP surgeries, playing pitches, allotments and youth play within the area. To conclude, I would like to thank the officer for his very detailed report and will concur with the conclusions in paragraph 311 that the proposals accord with the County Durham Plan and the MPPF, and that the proposals will secure a high-quality development on an allocated site for housing. As the officer report succinctly notes, in full, the vast majority of detailed, technical and planning matters are considered to be entirely compliant with policy, with only a small number of minor concerns raised by landscaping and affordable housing consultees, but which have been considered fully by officers and determined on planning balance to be acceptable. Accordingly, I would wish to politely request that the committee support the officer's recommendation to approve the application, such that this sustainable, well-designed, landscape-led development can be realised, delivering a valuable addition to the town and supporting Durham's ambition to meet local housing needs and making a real difference to the lives of local people. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Adam. Callum, would you like to come back on any issues raised there from the speakers?
Yeah, Chair. So quite a few issues are being raised, and there was quite a few matters being raised by the applicant as well. Again, all already addressed in the officer report. Quite a few different matters. If members want to go into anything specific, feel free to ask.
Thank you for that, Callum. Just before we go over to any questions from the members, could we, there was a couple of, I'm sure it'll get asked anyway, but a couple of questions asked in relation to the highways, yourself, Phil, and maybe Brian, yourself, with the flooding. There were 2 areas which I picked up there. If yourselves have got any comments to make to any references made, particularly like the round, I think the roundabout. I know it's in the report, Phil, but if you just explain sort of the reasoning why the roundabout never happened. And then, Brian, was the flooding opposite the properties opposite in relation to your thoughts on that? That would be appreciated.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not actually aware of why the roundabout is no longer the preferred access, because that came in the application late. But what I would say is we have to assess what's put in front of us. This is the latest proposal that the applicant has put to us. The criteria for right turn pockets is actually set nationally through Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, and there is no technical reason why that is unsuitable. The junction is designed for the 85th percentile speed, not the speed limit. There is an acknowledgement that the speeds on High West Road are above the speed limit. The speed limit is 30. The 85th percentile speed is up at the 40-mile-an-hour mark. However, that junction has been designed with visibility for 40 mile an hour. So from a technical perspective, we consider it to be safe and an alternative to the roundabout.
Thank you, Phil. Just an additional one there, which on the site visit yesterday, the crossing point, I forget the name of this crossing point, what they called?
The one to the west is a refuge island.
Refuge Island. I was just wondering if that was maybe being better placed, you know, on the other side of the junction where the public rights of way sort of comes onto the footpath and crosses over, connects up to the other public right way on the opposite side. It was just a personal thought on that one.
I think, Chair, the issue is with the hatching. It's required to put the right turn pocket in. It's not quite wide enough to get an island there, so we've got the tactile. I mean, it is, in the grand scheme of things, High West Road is a relatively lightly trafficked road, and it's carrying about 4,000 vehicles a day, so there is still, you know, there's no need actually to have an island there. It can be crossed in one stage.
Thank you, Phil. And Brian, Councillor Anne Reid, she raised the issue in relation to flooding, particularly for the properties opposite. What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of the flooding of the properties opposite. I'd be very much interested to hear more about that outside of this committee. What I can say about the site itself is it's been thoroughly checked and audited, the drainage design. It's in line with national and local policy and the County Durham plan. There is a fundamental requirement of new development that it does not increase flooding elsewhere, and that it protects its own new development from flooding, and that does look to be the case for this. It's been thoroughly checked out and within our comfort level for flood risk being very low. So as Lead Local Flood Authority, we've raised no concerns.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Brian. And Anne, will you speak with Brian outside of the meeting in relation to the issue with flooding opposite?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I certainly will, Brian. I'll come and see you, or I'll send you an email, and we'll meet up and we'll discuss the flooding on the opposite side, coming from the surface water from the field area, or from this site area. Okay.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Yep, Chair, so just on the drainage element as well. So this was discussed yesterday during the site visit. So officers have worked very closely with the applicant on this, and what officers would normally do is we would get some outline details of the drainage measures, and then we would secure further details by condition. In this instance, officers have required the applicant to provide more information up front. So at the current point in time, we have more information in front of us shown on the drawings, which are recommended to be approved than we normally would. So, you know, there's been a lot of discussions around this, and Brian has worked very closely with the developer on this. So, yeah, it has had more scrutiny than it normally would.
Thank you, Callum. And just before, last question was in relation to also Councillor Anne Reid brought up was the trees and there was TPOs on the trees and the ones that have come out.
Yep, so a tree preservation order was made in 2020 after the application was received in 2019. There's 71 trees covered by the TPO. So out of all the trees that are covered, just find my spot in the report, Chair. So there's 71 protected trees. Only one tree is proposed to be felled. It's a Category C tree at the northeastern edge of the site, but it is not covered by the TPO, so it's not protected. We also have a group of ash and hawthorn trees south of the proposed plot 27, towards the southwest corner of the site, and it's Category C, which is of low quality and value. Again, it's not protected by a TPO. So what the proposal is done is, it is designed so that it can retain all of the trees within the site. But as part of the tree survey that came in as part of the application, the tree surgeon has taken a look at it, and they feel that there are 8 trees covered by the TPO. They don't have to come out as a result of the scheme, but because of their poor quality, and they are likely to come down naturally in the coming years, they recommend that those 8 trees are felled. So it doesn't have to come out, it's just what the tree surgeon is recommending. The tree officer has taken a look at that and they agree with those recommendations, and therefore the tree officer has no objection to the application.
Thank you, Callum. Okay, then just before we open up the to the committee for the debate, was there any questions from members to the applicant? Craig, off to you.
Craig Martin, Councillor for North Lodge and Chester. Sorry, it's a question for one of the officers. Sorry, is that acceptable as well, Chair?
Yeah, go on, fire away.
By the way, I agree with your assessment of the pedestrian island. I did thought it was a bit of a weird one, putting it to the west when there's nothing to the west of that property. But I want to just investigate the roundabout proposal a bit more. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling with this application is that there's a significant reduction in the houses proposed from the original one. It was like 450 now to sort of around the 250 mark, all right? And I feel because of that reduction, that's the reason why this junction here as opposed to a roundabout is acceptable. And I imagine the developer will have made that calculation in terms of the cost-benefit proposal. So my question is my assessment and feeling correct? And if it is correct, how many more houses would the developer need to put into this site before you, from a highways perspective, come along and go, in actual fact, there's going to be a lot more traffic here than off the 250. We actually need a roundabout at that junction?
I think the first part of that, going back to what I originally said, because I inherited this application, you may need to put the bit about why it went from the original one to the applicant. In terms of the second bit, I can absolutely answer that. Is that we use both modelling software, but also there's criteria which is set nationally, which I mentioned in my first one through Design Manual for Roads and Bridges. So when it comes to using a ghost island as opposed to a roundabout, there's a criteria for the maximum amount that can be going on the east-west main road and a maximum amount that should be coming from the side road for that ghost island. Now, I can tell you that the upper limit for the east-west is like 18,000 vehicle movements a day, and currently High West Road's carrying about 4,000 on an average day. So there's a lot of scope in terms of the use of the ghost island. In terms of getting traffic in and out of there, that junction, that would be done through modelling. Now, there was an updated transport assessment in August 2023, which looked at some of the junctions. And again, that junction works well within its design capacity. So I couldn't give you an exact figure in terms of it would be 700, but that is the process that we would go through. If the applicant had decided to come in with, say, 500, they would have modelled 500, and that gives us a modelling output that says how much or to what level of capacity that junction has, is it working to, and also what the delay in the queue as a result of that are. So that's how we look at it. But at the moment, it's shown to work with minimal queues, minimal delay, and it works as proposed.
Yeah, just to follow that up, so are you saying that there's quite a wide brim of margin of error here? You would have to put in many hundreds of houses before you would come along and go, it needs a roundabout?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Jonathan, did you have a question for the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. But first of all, before I ask my question, I should have made a statement in declarations of interest previously. My party, the Green Party, has put in representations in relation to this application.
That's noted. That's okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, but I've had nothing to do with that process whatsoever. So the question to the applicant. First of all, I just want to cover with you the issue of the fact that there are mine workings underneath the development. Obviously, there's a mine head right in the middle of it. And so there are two aspects in my mind that are relevant to the planning application. First of all, there's an opportunity here for mine water heating, and that's something that's been done to the east of the county, so that all of the warm water in the mine workings underneath can often be used for a district heating system that can heat all the houses. So I wonder whether during the process of developing this application you put any thought into exploiting that possibility. And also connected with the mine workings is, of course, the risk associated with working directly over the top of the mine workings. It may well be that you find unstable ground. If you need to put in sort of expensive remedial works, how will that impact on the progress of this particular development? That's the first question, Chair. If you don't mind, I've got another one as well after this.
Okay, then thank you, Jonathan.
Hi, yeah, just to come on those 2 points. In terms of the district heating system, it isn't something we have considered. So unfortunately, beyond that, I can't really provide any further answer in that regard. With respect to the working above former mine workings, obviously it's a matter that was picked up through the site investigation and coal mining risk assessment. Ultimately, in respect to the mine shaft, there's a I think 20-metre distance circumference around that's within a no build zone, which we've accorded with through the detailed design. There is areas of high walls where open cast mining has been undertaken historically, which again the development is required to and has sought to avoid any development across those high walls. And there are, I believe, 3 worked coal seams beneath the site. Again, all of which was picked up via the site investigation and coal mine and risk assessment. And ultimately there'll be a programme of grouting, which is in essence filling those voids with concrete to create stable ground. And obviously foundation solutions that reflect that approach as well, to ensure that obviously you know, those former mine workings are appropriately remediated, and there'll be no ground stability issues on the surface as a result of that.
Okay, Jonathan, did you have an additional question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You brought national politics into your little speech at the beginning there. Obviously, Persimmon have been extensively criticised nationally as a consequence of the building standards of individual houses. People have had to commission snagging surveys to find out exactly what's wrong with their new house, and then put a lot of pressure on Persimmon to actually make good the house. Obviously, as you know, that's been a national issue. So I really hope that that's not a situation that arises with regards these houses, and I wonder whether you could give us any assurance on that matter.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, there's no getting away from the fact historically Persimmon has suffered from that sort of negative press releases and reporting. We had a change in senior leadership 4 or 5 years ago now. And they've come in and ultimately have made it our primary goal to ensure that our customer care build quality is significantly improved. I'm not sure if members are aware, but the HBF, the House Builders Federation, they monitor and score house builders on matters such as build quality through, well, it's a 5-star builder is a sort of a goal that developers seek to achieve. So anybody buying a home on any new build development, they will be sent a survey after completing, asking ultimately, you know, what their experience has been like in terms of build quality, in terms of customer care, in terms of communication, and are given the opportunity to submit that to the HBF and ultimately suggest whether they would recommend to a friend that they would to purchase property from that developer. Ultimately, that data is collected on an annual basis and is reported in the press in terms of whether developers are in over a 1, 2, 3, 4, or ultimately as many want to be a 5-star builder. This year will be the 3rd year that we have achieved 5-star builder status, so we've put significant effort and time and resources into ensuring that our build quality has improved, our customer services processes have improved, and ultimately that's now being shown in those scores that we're receiving back from customers. So certainly, yes, it's a matter that we have been, you know, inflicted with in terms of our build quality, but it's something we've focused hard on the last 5 years, and ultimately that's coming now into fruition with an improved quality, and certainly that's been seen by our customers.
Thank you. I think Case Officer wants to come back in on that.
Yeah, if it's okay, Councillor. So just on the 3 queries that were raised, just from a planning material consideration perspective, so thanks to the applicant for responding to the questions. On the first one, regarding the groundwater heat source system, I can appreciate why that would be a wish, but ultimately there's nothing in the NPPF or in the County Durham plan which can require the developer to provide it. I can understand it's a request, but it's nothing that can allow the council to require it in this instance. In terms of the coal mining history on this site, there's been extensive investigations carried out, and we have consulted the Coal Authority and with the council's own environmental health teams, and they have no objection subject to conditions. And those conditions are listed at the bottom of the report. In terms of the build quality of the dwellings themselves, as far as the planning team are concerned, the design of the scheme is okay. In terms of the actual quality of the finished product, that would be a matter for building control under separate legislation.
Thank you for that, Callum. Patricia, did you have a question for the applicant?
Yes, I have. Can you tell me how much more land you own on that site, please?
Yes, certainly. We don't actually own any land at the current stage in that area. We've got an option over a significant portion of the land. all of the application boundary and any work associated with it, obviously we control via an option agreement. So we would acquire the site post-planning through that option agreement.
Thank you. And also, I think to add to that, Patricia, what also, because that was asked yesterday, I believe, there's only this site in the allocation for the in the Durham plan for the allocated site. Okay, if that's everybody had all the questions, we'll now open it up for debate with the committee. And Simon, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at this. I understand the situation of sort of the people wandering around roundabouts, whether that's been previously discussed. I think the fact that we've had here that the highways is meeting standards means that, and I understand Councillor Joplin's concern, but it means it's neither here nor there what land they have and it's the plan that we've got here that we have to assess. It's, I think, for me, where I was looking at it is it's slightly above what was recommended in the County Durham plan. However, nothing seems to have been raised in concern around that, and I do see plenty of mitigation as well as a really good 106 pot for the local community to offset. As it stands at the minute, I can't see any reason to refuse this, and I'd be happy to go with the officer's recommendation. I'd move that.
Thank you for that, Simon. And David, you had your hand up next.
Councillor David Boyes, representing Easington. Yeah, in terms of supporting this scheme, I can't see any reasons why we can't. Some of the objections in terms of speeding along that road, I don't know if that's a planning issue, because surely that's more of a police enforcement issue rather than like whether we should be discussing it on in a planning committee. I accept some of the concerns from the entrance of the site, and I think a roundabout probably would have been better, but I'm quite happy to go with the Highways Officer's recommendations on that. The fact that there's 92 direct jobs, 125 indirect, and 15% affordable housing is generous in terms of a lot of the schemes we've been getting lately. And the fact that nationally we've got to build 300,000 homes a year, and each area needs to accept their particular share. And the fact that even though it's out in the countryside to a certain extent, it's not within a higher landscape value. So I'm happy to support this. I'm just a little bit concerned, as was Jonathan, about the vicinity of like the mine shaft, one on the site, another one within a few metres of it, and the fact that there's been recent underground working. If I represent an area where there's been a lot of development on top of a coal area, and we've had problems with subsidence, and we've had problems with noxious gases coming from these particular sites. Now, I noticed that the Coal Authority have asked for extensive drilling and investigative works prior to development. The developers said they will do phased during the development. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how it's going to be phased, and will we get a report back should there be some issues that we need of concern during the development?
Thank you, David. Callum, can you come in there?
Yep, Chair. So the phasing of the development has been something that's been discussed with the applicant. The reason why is that it is going to require quite extensive investigations, and because of the shape of the site, it makes sense that the southwestern part of the site comes first. I'll just try and get it up on the screen for you. So if you just see my apologies, if you just see my red dot there, that is roughly the divide within the site. So the proposal would look to investigate and remediate this part of the site first, discharge the relevant condition, and then look to build it out. And then they would do the works further on within the development. And just to follow on for the other queries as well. So again, just to reiterate, the Coal Authority have been consulted. They have no objection. The Contamination Officer in Environmental Health has also been consulted, and they have no objection. So if any issues were uncovered during the works would have to stop and there'd be discussions with the Coal Authority and with Environmental Health about how to resolve those issues, if they come about.
Thank you, Callum. Thank you for that, David. Anita, then Patricia. Anita first.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Anita Savoury for the Weardale ward. Can I just, it's a small point, but it's very relevant. Can I bring to the members' attention paragraph 295, where it states that the nearest leisure centre is at Spectrum at Willington. There is a leisure centre at Paises West at Crook. So that's important that members know that. And I've listened intently to what's been said today, and having been on the site visit yesterday, I'm encouraged to see the reduction in the number of the houses when this was first mooted. Given the variety of the house type, and particularly bungalows, which are always in demand, I see this as a positive for Crook and the large contribution financially for the area, which is much needed, and I will be supporting the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Anita. And Patricia, yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I'm a lone voice here, but never mind. First of all, this application goes back a long time. I'm a councillor for Crook and well aware of the application. It was mentioned about the that land going into the county plan in 2020. Well, I certainly wasn't notified in 2020 that that land was going in the county plan, because previously, when this first came up, it was not in the county plan. But that's by the by now, it is in the county plan. And I take Persimmon's point that we do have an allocation in Durham for housing, but that's not to say we have an allocation that's got to go in Crook. Now, Crook, this site has got several negatives. For a start, it is obviously open countryside. It's been grazed on for many, many years. So whilst it is low-grade land, it is farming land and has been used as that. Also, this site is known to flood. This area is known to flood. Now, the fact that we've got mine workings on this site and we can't predict or future-proof the rain, which, as we know, has devastated parts of this country during this winter, and it looks as though it's only going to get wetter. How can we be sure that those mine workings will not be affected by all the water that is going to come down on that land, because we will not have the fields to soak it up? All we will have is hard landscaping where all the houses are, which will then cause a huge amount of runoff. And yes, they're putting suds in. Nobody seemed to be very sure what sort of suds they were going to be yesterday, whether they were just a little bowl or whether they could take a decent amount of water. And really, that is one of the biggest issues I have on this site, is the flooding. Secondly, it's going to, yes, bring in a nice amount of money for Crook, but that is a one-off payment. That is not going to make any difference in the long term for the residents of Crook. Also, I would like to point out that a doctor's surgery in Crook, and yes, there's money going to that, but that money will never compensate for all the extra residents that surgery has got to try and accommodate. And it's already, I get complaints all the time that people can't see a doctor. It's already at capacity. So that is a real issue. So, you know, nobody seems to be taking into account the quality of life that these people who are moving there are going to have. Also, as I said, I'm really, really worried about this flooding, because it just to me seems not enough can be done. I did ask the officer yesterday how they calculate future runoff and drainage. And really, the calculation is quite out of date. as we found out in other parts of the country. The allocation of houses to County Durham is an issue. It's an issue because I don't think Crook needs the housing. Yes, County Durham might need the housing, but the children who are going to be of senior age to go to school have got to be transported at the expense of this council, either into Bishop Auckland or to Durham. So to me, that really isn't good enough. There is no provision in Crook for senior schools. Now, I know that you're saying that the local junior school can take 70-odd children, I believe. But that's a calculation, that's a guess. We don't know that. And I think that all this supposition that goes on when it comes to housing, to me, there's not a lot of sense there. The mine workings are a serious issue on that site, because there's a lot of houses on that site. And the wet climate that we have been told by the experts who deal with this is going to really cause problems. And the problems are not going to be for Persimmon. They are going to be for the residents and insurers and everybody else to mop up. So I'm sorry, Chair, I just feel that I cannot support this. I mean, there is a loss of habitat up there. It's an absolutely beautiful area, and there will be quite a significant loss of habitat and loss of, how can I put it, amenity for the local residents, really. Whilst I could say that Persimmon has done all they can to mitigate a lot of these, I'm not deriding the fact that things haven't changed dramatically since this application started. In my view, it's just not right for Crook. So in that instance, I should be voting against this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Patricia. Did I miss somebody down here? Jonathan, and then Maura, I'll come after yourself. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. A few points I wanted to make in relation to the application. First of all, it's really actually very pleasing to see that very considerable changes have been made to the application from the first application then to the re-application. In particular, the very big reduction in the number of houses, so that they're much better spaced out, and it's actually given you the ability to create those green wedges throughout and create a much more landscape-led development. So that's very positive, and developments like this, of this sort of scale, should be landscape-led. We should be thinking about the green spaces first and then fitting the houses within them. And so often it happens the other way around. But it does beg the question, why were so many houses above those that have been allocated in the County Durham plan proposed in the first application? I mean, honestly, it would just be better if you could come in with an application that aligns with the County Durham plan. But as I say, good to see the reduction in densification and the landscape lead. It's also good to see that there's a biodiversity management and monitoring plan in place, and that you've achieved a 10% net biodiversity gain. Especially, and what's given you the opportunity to do that is by the reservation of green spaces within the site. So I am happy to see that. The SUDS side of it, as Councillor Joplin has just mentioned, does raise a little bit of concern with me. I appreciate that, you know, they've been carefully calibrated to accept the surface water runoff from the site to try and prevent it from exceeding the Greenfield runoff rate. But climate change in the future does present an uncertain quantity there. So the way these things, the method I believe you've used to calculate the capacity of the SUDS scheme has been by sort of looking back at previous rainfall events over the last 50, 100 years and extrapolating, therefore, the potential forwards for future flooding. But climate change changes all of that. So has this system, this SUDS system, been, you know, essentially the capacity needs to be increased because of the potential for uncertainty in future weather patterns. Also good to see solar on the roofs and EV charging, really pleased to see that. Not so great to see the loss of mature trees, though there aren't that many being lost, and I do appreciate that the overall situation with regards to biodiversity is positive. I'm a little bit concerned to see that the retained trees have been positioned so that they're within residential gardens. That's not a positive thing, of course, because it means that residents, in all likelihood might want to prune them right back to restrict, to get better light to their house and everything else. When we see how trees being encircled by residential gardens, properties, it generally results in a higher likelihood of impact to those trees. So they would have been better, the green spaces built around to retain them. And the last point I want to make is in relation to the footpath that penetrates right through the centre of the site that you can see. Do you mind sort of pointing the pointer at the public right-of-way so that members can just see exactly where I'm referring to, where it exits onto the road at the bottom? That's it, that's the precise spot. So on the site visit yesterday, we had a look at that particular location, and like most countryside footpaths, it's unsurfaced. That's normal for countryside footpaths. But in this circumstance, because it's going to be providing for the needs of people coming out of the development and getting onto the footpath, a lot of people will have mobility vehicles, potential for pushchairs and things like that. I think there's a need for an improved surface, and I wonder whether council officers might be able to comment on that particular issue. Thanks, Chair.
Yep, Chair. So a lot of matters were raised there. I think first on the surface of the footpath. Mike, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think there's clearly the surface will need to be improved from the grass surface you have at the moment, should this development proceed. There's arguments for and against how formal you make that surface. An unsealed surface through a landscape area, green wedge, retains a bit more of a rural feel, but equally, as you've indicated there, Councillor, if there are, we're expecting residents will want to use that, potentially with pushchairs and wheelchairs. There's an argument for a sealed surface. Sealed surface in winter can become icy and is more of a problem if you're on a bit of a gradient. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I'm fairly flexible about what surface goes on. It's a publicly maintainable highway anyway, so the County Council is responsible for the surface, and we've got that scope to improve the surface if what's provided ultimately proves to be inadequate for the needs. But I think through the planning officers and the developer, I'm sure we can come up with something that's acceptable.
So, Chair, if members did want to secure a different footpath surface, we could secure that by an additional condition, if members wished.
I think it'd be sensible to nail down that one down right now.
Yeah. So, just for the record, what kind of surface would you be seeking? Would you want like proper asphalt, a sealed surface?
Obviously take advice from the officer on this, but it seems to me that you want a sort of midway, but it needs to retain a sort of rural feel to it. So an asphalt track might not be the most suitable approach, but it does need to be solid and be able to accept wheelchairs and everything else. So are there any suggestions that would fit the bill?
Chair, yeah, if I come in on that, I mean, the sort of surface that's used on the railway paths around the county that is quite acceptable for wheelchairs, pushchairs, which is sort of a sub-base but with Winston dust on top, but properly compacted and rolled in. So you're not having to push a pushchair or a wheelchair through 2 inches of loose gravel. It's a properly bound, compacted surface. I think retains that sort of rural feel without going all the way to a full asphalt surface.
Just on that, Chair, I think the best way to word the condition would be if we were to secure details to be agreed prior to the occupation of the first dwelling on the site, and then we don't state the precise surface treatment in the condition, and then what we can do is we can work with the developer, they can submit details my team in planning would consult Mike's team, and then we would secure the best possible surface for this site under that condition, if you like. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for bringing that in, Jonathan, because I actually had the same thought on that yesterday. But just as a side point for yourself, Mike, what I did note on that footpath was a channel, because obviously it's on a gradient and water runs down that bank. So there was a channel where obviously the water had made its tracks. So if it is loose, sort of windstone, whatever it's called, that might wash it out. So just going forward, and also on the bottom, Jonathan, this might be I'm not too sure who it is, might be highways. The bottom of the path, due to the water coming down that bank, was quite washed out as well. The footpath, it was just quite roughshod. That also wanted, could that be part of such a condition, if the application was to be approved, that that was brought up to adoptable standard, because it was just really poor, wasn't it? Simple as.
So that stretch of highway, I believe it fell outside the red line boundary, and I'm not sure if it belongs to the neighbouring property to the west, or whether it belongs to the council as part of the adopted highway verge. I'm not sure, basically. I don't know. Phil, I mean, if the developer was to look to improve the surface of the highway verge, is that something we could secure? It's outside the red line boundary.
Can you just give us a minute to look up I'll look at the adoptions. Graham's just shown me it on the...
We'll come back to
yeah, if you
on
could,
that
please.
one.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Maura, over to you.
Yeah, I think we're ever so slightly going around in circles because it doesn't look as though there's actually any material planning ground on which to turn the application down. Quite frankly, I understand the issues with the mine shafts, but we've had developments like this across County Durham. We've got a lot of mine shafts, and we have, you know, as an authority, managed to mitigate there and make it work. We've heard about the drainage, and we do have issues with potential future rainfall, but that's something that, again, we're aware of as an authority and feed into our modelling. And in terms of the design, in terms of the layout, and even of the highways, there are no major objections, and I understand people wanted potentially different highways access, but you know, because of the land ownership issues and so forth that we've heard about today, this is the recommendation that we've got. If we were to turn this down, then we will get it overturned on appeal, most likely, because again, there are very few material planning grounds on which we can say no. And at that point, we will probably lose a lot of the 106 and any benefit that might be coming to the community. And I understand what Councillor Jopling said earlier about people not being able to access GP surgeries. That's a problem in every single community, basically, in the whole country at this point. We're facing a crisis in the health service, and as much as we do need to take those amenities into consideration in planning, we can't just not build houses because another part of the government isn't functioning as it used to, because otherwise we would just never build houses. We'd get an even worse housing crisis. And you know, every single councillor in this room has had new build housing in their area. We've carried a lot of the can for the county's housing target in Coxo Ward. We've had several new estates built recently that are even further from amenity than this particular development. There's no grounds on which we can turn it down, and I think that we should move to a vote if possible.
Thank you for that, Maura. And Phil, can we just come back to you on the footpath?
Yeah, Chair, it is actually adopted highway, so it could be secured by the developer under a Section 278 agreement to change it to a more suitable paved surface, just to continue the footpath. So there is a mechanism by which we could ask the developer to do that.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And on that note, if we've got no further committee to speak, Plan Manager Stephen Reid would like to come in relation to a point raised by Patricia in relation to the allocations of the site.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think just briefly to take members back to the County Durham plan, and I think if I could on Councillor Joblin's reference to the consultation at the time. I mean, there's a number of members in the room today who will have been on planning committee you know, for the last 10, 15 years as the plan was going through its gestation period and proceeding towards adoptions. There was a significant amount of consultation which was undertaken at the time, including with town and parish councils, AAPs and local members. I would be disappointed, Councillor Joblin, if colleagues in our policy team omitted you from that exercise, but more than happy to talk that through outside of the chamber. But I think the long and short of it, Chair, as Mr McVickers from Persimmons pointed out, the spatial strategy for the County Council that was adopted in autumn 2020 did set out allocations in the main towns, in the mid-Durham housing market area, and this allocation is one of them. I know our policy team looked high and low at the time to see if there was any better competing sites in and around the Crook area. You know, we searched for brownfield sites, we searched for sites closer to the town centre, and this was decided the best one in town, the best show in town. And I think that stands today in terms of the development plan presumption. If I could just quickly touch on the issues raised with relation to the health and the schools, and again, with respect to Councillor Joblin, I think the question was asked whether it was guesswork. Well, just if I could assure Chair that there's a bit more than guesswork goes into these type of assessments. We've worked with our education department to look at the most latest up-to-date education figures to work out the capacity in primary and secondary schools, and they also factor in existing commitments as well to come up with the analysis we do. And the same applies with relation to health facilities as well. You know, we don't have an objection from the NHS with regards to this application, and I think as Councillor McKeown has just raised, I mean, you know, this is sadly a point of reference across large areas of the county that getting a doctor's appointment potentially isn't as easy as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. I do have a meeting in with the NHS strategic manager in the next couple of weeks, Chair, and I'm more than happy to pick up the point of reference from Councillor Joblin there and just see how quickly we can get some discussions going with the local surgeries to see what we can do on that. I think Callum has made it quite clear to committee the amount of work that's gone on this application for, I think I'm right in saying, in excess of 4 years now. The application started off at 450 odd units, and there's been a lot of work done working proactively with Persimmons and indeed the land agent for the owner to try and get the numbers down to a more manageable level. I think the amount of green space we have on the development, in my opinion, is one of the greenest, most spacious development that I've seen officers putting up to this committee in recent times. And I think in some which I think hopefully we've answered all the questions to allow members now to make it a determination. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stephen. So we've had a mover and a seconder. Sorry, Patricia, yeah, just quickly before we go to the...
Just to come back on what Stephen has said, thank you very much for that, Stephen, and I look forward to your conversation with the Trust and the NHS. I get your point about the housing allocation for Durham. There is no dispute in that. The point I just wanted to reiterate, and I know it's not going to cut any ice now, but what I'm saying is I don't think Crook needs it. That's what I'm saying. There is no dispute with the housing allocation that the government have given County Durham and the fact that County Durham does need more housing. I just think that Crook is definitely, in High West Road, is definitely the wrong place because of all the problems with the water, the mine workings. It's just not fair on residents in the estate opposite that they could be coming in for a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thanks again, Patricia. Kevin, did you want a quick one there?
Yes, Chair, if I'm here. Just regarding the mine shafts, I mean, we're actually building a garden village in Sayham, which is adjacent to the existing mine shafts, and we're actually utilising the mine water heating, which was described by the Secretary of State as a development with national significance. So I don't say building around a mine shaft is a negative. And this is going to be 1,500 houses. There's no local need for 1,500 houses. There's a need for the county to satisfy the outstanding need that we've got. You know, I listened this morning to a few of the comments made here. It goes somewhere to explaining why we can't meet our own targets in County Durham to build the housing that we need in the middle of a national housing crisis. I've got no problems at all supporting this development and the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Jonathan, just a quick one, because I would like to wind this one on.
Thank you, Chair. It is a very quick one. I mean, I also support this application. So I just want to sort of push back against some of those comments just made. It's a very positive application, and I hope that what I've said presents that. But as always, there are little issues that we want to raise and attempt to optimise through this process, and that's what's happening here. Thank you.
Thanks again for that. So we had a move and a second. We had Simon moved it, Councillor Winston and Councillor David Boyd seconded. But before we go to the vote, there was mention of a couple of conditions there. Callum, would you like to touch on that?
Chair, so I'm not sure what the procedure would be at this council on this. Would the precise wording of the new condition be delegated to officers through Steve and then agreed with yourself? Yeah.
Yes, if members be fine with that. Neil?
Yeah, Chair, just to be clear, so as you say, we've had a mover and seconder in accordance with the officer recommendation. We've then had some debate after that about potential additional conditions, and my note on that is there were potentially two. One dealing with resurfacing of the footpath within the site, which the rights of way officer spoke about, and another condition which would be a negatively worded condition because it's outside of the site for improvements to the highway surface. I just want to be clear whether members are requiring those additional conditions or whether that's not something that you want to pursue. I mean, it sounded to me like there was potentially justification for that first condition for the public right of way. I was less clear about why the surface improvements to the highway outside of the site would be necessary to make this development acceptable, which is the key test for a condition to be imposed. So I think we just need to get to the bottom of that before it's put to the vote. Now, if it is decided to approve this and those additional conditions are considered by members to be required, I think the process would be that fine detail of the wording of those conditions would be delegated to officers before the decision notice is issued.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, and I think the second one for the footpath outside of the site, it goes hand in hand because it was the water runoff from the public right of way, which was sort of causes the deterioration of the footpath. So that was my thoughts on that. So on that point, Simon and David, are you still happy to move it with them new conditions on?
Yeah, more than happy.
Thank you very much for that. And now we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? And all of those against? Okay, thank you, and that application is approved. Thank you, everybody, for that debate and for residents who've attended today. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, now we move into our second application of the day. Oh, yeah, would somebody ask Mike? Oh. Sorry, Mike, it's not yourself, it's for Mike Curran. Okay, John, I think Kirsty's gone for it, John. for him. Yeah, absolutely, Patricia. Yeah, thank you for your input as well. Okay, we're unable to find Councillor Mike Carrer, so we assume he may have left the building. Okay, we're moving to the second application. It's Sugar Hill Primary School, Sheraton Road, Newton Aycliffe. And we have Officer Michelle Penman to present that application. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have one update to the report. We received a comment from Councillor Neville Jones after the report was published. I'll discuss it in the consultations and representation section of the presentation. Let's just moving on to the slides here. In terms of the application site, you can see the site, it's approximately 3.6 hectares within the red line boundary there. It's an established school site located within the centre of Newton Aycliffe. It's bounded by residential properties to east, south and west. Newton Aycliffe Workmen's Club is located to the southwest, St Clair's Court Care Home, Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses and the police station located to the north. The site is currently accessed from Sheraton Road to the south. This aerial photograph shows the current layout of the school. You can see the two buildings towards the southern part of the site, the playing fields, hard surface playground areas and Mugger to the north. You can see the existing parking areas which are to the frontage of the building as well. These are some existing photos of the site showing the three existing accesses to the school, which are all from Sheraton Road to the south. The main vehicular and pedestrian access to the site is the most western of the three on the left-hand photo there. The other accesses provide additional entry points. These show the existing school buildings, which date from 1951 to 1960. They're considered to be life expired, failing and exhibiting major defects, hence the application for the replacement school. Further photographs of the buildings properties that share boundaries with the site. The top left photo is the properties on Church Close looking west. The top right photo is looking northwest, shows the care home, police station and such. The bottom left photo is looking north-northeast and shows the properties on Eldon Close and Biscop Crescent. Again, the bottom right shows properties on Biscop Crescent there. So the key details of the proposal are set out in paragraph 7 to 14 of the committee report, but this is the proposed layout. You can see the proposed building in yellow, and the existing school buildings to be demolished are in the pink line, which you can just see there. The building will be a single-storey L-shaped building. The tallest element of the building is towards the centre of the site. The new school has been positioned to the north of the existing buildings. That's to allow the existing school to remain sort of functional. Once the new school is built, the pupils will be decanted into the new school and the existing school then demolished. The proposed school will have the same capacity as the existing in terms of staff and pupil numbers. It's proposed to retain the three existing vehicular accesses into the site. The central and eastern vehicular accesses here and here will be provided to be improved to form a one-way system. 3 new pedestrian-only accesses will also be provided with dedicated access for each pupil group. The proposed parking provision will be increased to provide 50 number spaces in total, and also the cycle parking and EV charging points proposed, which meets the SBD. Here is a 3D sort of model of the site, which gives a better indication of how it will sort of work. I'd point out that the Western Play Yard has been reduced slightly during the course of the application to provide more sports field pitches to meet Sport England requirements. Here's just some more images of what the proposed building will look like. In terms of consultations and representations, they're set out in paragraphs 46 to 63 of the committee report. There are no objections from statutory and internal consultees subject to conditions where appropriate. Great Aycliffe Town Council have expressed some concerns, in particular that the proposals don't take advantage of the opportunity to improve safety by creating an on-site drop-off area for parents, and they've also raised concerns around parking congestion and whether the parking complies with the council's SPD. They've also made comments about sort of the construction phase of the development and about a public defibrillator, but they sort of lie outside the planning process. Councillor Neville Jones, which I mentioned earlier, he provided comments after the report was published. He would just like it placed on the record. Whilst he thinks the new building will be amazing, it does nothing to address the parking issues and misery the nearby residents are forced to endure on a daily basis. As I discussed previously, the numbers of pupils and staff are going to remain unchanged, and there are proposed improvements to the existing access and parking, including that one-way system and the 50 number parking spaces to be provided. We have also received 2 letters of representation from local residents. One was sort of questioning whether plans were available and in relation to the construction and demolition phases of the development. Another resident from Biscop Crescent commented that they would oppose the development if the new building encroaches closer to their rear garden house, and they noted that the school playing field is already quite close to their garden. In response to those comments, I would note that the condition has been applied requiring submission of construction management plans for both the construction and demolition phases of the development. In terms of the sort of concerns around the proximity to dwellings on Biscop Crescent, while the new school building will be slightly closer to the boundary and positioned slightly further north, the majority of the school field will remain as existing, as will the existing sort of hedge boundary treatments there. So the impacts on residential amenity, we have assessed them and considered them acceptable in terms of separation distances and noise impacts. So basically, to summarise, the proposed development would provide a modern, efficient primary school on a site currently in use for education purposes. It would provide a significant benefit to the community in terms of the quality education provision and would be sustainable and of a suitable design. Consideration has been given to the main planning issues and the proposal assessed against the relevant development plan policies and material considerations, and subject to conditions where appropriate, the proposals are found to be acceptable. The concerns raised have been sort of carefully balanced against the benefits of the scheme in terms of the modern education provision, and the proposed development is considered to broadly accord with the relevant policies of the County Durham Plan and National Planning Policy Framework. I therefore recommend that the application be approved with the conditions set out within the committee report. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. We don't have any registered speakers for this application, so we're going to open it straight up over to the committee. Jonathan, over to you.
First of all, I just want to say it's disappointing that the applicant isn't represented in this meeting. The applicant obviously being the County Council, presumably the Education Authority. So there's no one really for us to ask questions to.
Sorry, one moment, Jonathan. Sorry, Jonathan, there is representation up the back of the room. They're just on the wrong side, I guess. Okay, then. Okay, in that case, the couple of questions to the applicant. First of all, have you looked at the potential for, if this is it's a new building, so it could be extremely well insulated, and that would enable you to make use of ground source heat pumps as a heating method that would potentially save considerable costs in energy bills for the school in the future. So I wonder what your thoughts on that were. It's an ideal location for such a scheme because it's got the external grounds required for deploying that sort of technology as well. That's the first point. And obviously there's been a great deal of concern expressed by the Great Aycliffe Town Council in relation to the impact, you know, that basically parents, like we all experience, I guess, as councillors,
parents dropping their kids off right next to schools and it causing local chaos and obstructions of highways, and actually in my area can lead to some quite confrontational situations. And I do agree with the town council here that this gives you an opportunity potentially to design out some of those problems. So I wonder what your thoughts on that were. And obviously, have you considered a school travel plan, the implementation of a school travel plan? We have a travel planning officer in the council who advises on these sorts of things. So he'd be making recommendations in relation to things like walking buses. So locations parents can drop off their kids not right next to the school, then all the kids get to walk together supervised by an adult. So things like that, when they're deployed, work really well. And this used to be done sort of 5 or 10 years ago, quite a considerable amount, but it's dropping off across the whole county. So I just appreciate your reflections on those points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Would the applicant like to respond to any of that? Is it possible to come forward onto the microphone, please?
Yeah, so thank you for the queries. Those queries in particular have been covered within Michelle's committee report. I'll take the sustainability query first. So we have submitted a full sustainability strategy as part of the application, and it complies with the DFE's specification for net zero carbon in operation. So they will be delivering a biodiverse sedum green roof with PV panels on the roof. So that's fully compliant with the DFE standards. In terms of parking, the development does seek to increase the number of parking bays than what's there currently. That does include 10 visitor bays as well. So they are seeking to acknowledge that the concerns that have been raised in terms of off-site parking, but we are compliant with the DCC standards essentially. In terms of the travel plan, we have submitted a travel plan as part of the submission as well, which again has been considered in Michelle's committee report.
Jonathan, will you put your microphone on, please?
Yeah, I really would like to know how you're going to heat the buildings.
So the system will use air source heat pumps, which is renewable technology. But again, the sustainability strategy that we've submitted as part of the submission does detail that in full.
Just before I had Simon and David and Maura. Before we go there, Phil, in relation to the parking, I wasn't sure if this was something you want to make a comment on. I do realise it's quite great lot with residential around it, and the scope for improvement is quite limited, probably.
I think, Chair, it's the problem we have at all our schools, not just here in the previous authority I worked for. And the issue is, if you try and bring in a pick-up and drop-off, it's kind of dead space during the day. It's busy in that morning peak and that evening peak, but it tends to just take space away from the other school uses to provide it. But as both Michelle's report and the applicant said, they are compliant with the parking standards, and the numbers of pupils and teachers aren't changing through this application.
Thank you for that, Phil. Simon, you were first. Can I bring you in?
Cheers, Chair. Yeah, just in looking at it, obviously within I understand and I can see that if there's issues around parking, there are going to be exacerbated during the building of this, but obviously we're going to have a construction management plan there to support that and minimise that. My overarching thing is that, look, Durham has been crying out for new schools. We had the number reduced from what we were meant to get or what we were scheduled to get prior to 2010, and we've had a massive drop-off on what we should have had done in this area. What this will do is actually it'll be better for the young people of the area going into a new school building, better facilities. It will ultimately, I understand the concerns around what heating systems. However, this will be more, you'd expect it being brand new to be more efficient, more cost effective, and at a time when school budgets are really at a stretching point, that would be brilliant for them. I can't see why we don't do anything other than approve this, and I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you for that, Simon. Next we had David, Councillor David Boy.
Chair, are we still asking the...
No, we're not, David. I brought it all into one, but you're quite happy to bring it if you had any questions.
No, it's a question for the consultants, but I guess it's a general question as well. I think reference was made in the report of the Workmen's Club that's opposite and that's used as a drop-off point, and the possibility of having that upgraded. Is there a service level agreement with the Workmen's Club, or is it just the Workmen's Club offering their car park at busy times? Because I know over our area we had a similar situation, and the Workmen's Club just withdrew the offer, so we were left high and dry basically. So I don't know if there's something on paper and recorded that the Workmen's Club does offer use of the car park at drop-off and pick-up points.
No, so the school have confirmed that there isn't a formal arrangement in place for that.
So it wouldn't be possible really to upgrade that car park if it's just a word-of-mouth agreement?
It's just a loose arrangement with the Workmen's Club.
Sorry, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a formal arrangement in place currently. So that's something that would have to ask further if there is a request for that.
Because it does seem to address what the officer said in terms of dead space during the day, that if that could be utilised, then there can be a formal agreement with the Workmen's Club, and then that could be used as a de facto drop-off pick-off point, and it's not dead space as well.
Yeah, Chair, just to come in on that, I mean, my understanding from what I've heard is, regardless of whether there's a formal or informal arrangement, the scheme is being assessed by officers as acceptable in terms of its impact. So I don't think there'd be any proper sort of planning justification to require the developer to ensure that this informal arrangement, if that's what it is, results in some sort of upgrade to the surface condition or otherwise. So I don't think that's something that really members could insist on as part of this application.
Condition, Chair, I just thought if it was a formal or informal, I don't think it's going to affect my judgment or determination on the case itself.
Thank you, David. That's noted. Maura, you are next.
Thank you, Chair. When we had a new build school in my area, we were able to get a turning circle put in for people who came to drop off the kids. And that's something that I had in my secondary school. So I'd seen it working and suggested it. And that worked well, but I think the problem is that you're very restricted on this particular site. And we tried to do a walking bus for this school before we got the turning circle put in when we rebuilt it, and it worked for a bit, but either the school has to have a teaching assistant or another member of support staff lead it, or it has to be led by volunteers. And the problem with things that are volunteer led is that volunteers can withdraw their labour at any time, and it's not always sustainable. I do have some concerns about the parking issue, and if Councillor Boy's suggestion can come off, that's great, but fundamentally the local members will have been consulted. They all know these parking issues very well, and they will have been part of the process of putting the new build together, as will the school itself. We don't have all that many objections coming from residents, and you know, it's I sit on a parish council, many of us sit on town and parish councils, and this is the kind of response that we would give without wanting to turn the application down. And so I think that we're all pretty much agreed, from what I can hear, that we support the school new build, even if we would, in an ideal world, like to see a better school parking solution.
Thank you for that, Maura. And next was Elaine, Councillor Elaine Peake. Over to yourself.
I noticed, thank you, it's Elaine Peake, calling from Bishop Midland. You said that the playground had to be reduced slightly to accommodate Sport England. Is the hard surfacing playground smaller than that there is there now?
So basically they're retaining much of the hard play surface. They are sort of rearranging it to go around the building to give sort of separate areas for the sort of juniors, infants and things. The reason why the hard surface was reduced sort of slightly to the west was to accommodate more sports playing field and pitches, to sort of conform with Sport England's playing field policy. But otherwise, the existing sort of playgrounds and things will be rearranged and sort of retained as much as possible.
Okay, if there's no other speakers registered to speak, we have a mover from Councillor Simon Wilson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jonathan Elmer. All those in favour? Thank you, everybody. That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for today's attendance. That concludes today's business. Thank you.